Have you ever really stopped to think about where your country's laws come from? We tend to think of them as being part of our national character, something that's uniquely us. But what if I told you that, for the most part, your country's laws, well, they aren't really yours at all? Okay, let's get into this. It's a great question, isn't it? We just assume our legal system is like our language or our flag. It feels like it's woven into the very DNA of our nation, a core piece of our identity. But is that actually how it works? Or is there something else going on behind the scenes?
So, for a long time, the leading theory was this idea called Volksgeist. It's a German word that basically means spirit of the people. And the idea was simple. Every nation's laws just kind of grow naturally out of its unique culture, its values, its history. It sounds pretty intuitive, doesn't it? It feels right. But, as we're about to see, it's mostly a myth.
Now, the idea that really smashed this myth to pieces came from a Scottish legal historian named Alan Watson. He came up with a way much more radical and, honestly, way more interesting theory that laws evolve not by being created from scratch, but by being borrowed. And he gave this process a great name: legal transplants. And here he is, Alan Watson, and that's the book that pretty much turned legal history on its head. His big argument was that it's just so much easier for a society to copy a law from somewhere else than it is to go through all the trouble of inventing a new one. Let's take a look at what he really meant. So, what exactly is a legal transplant? Well, it's pretty much what it sounds like. It's when a rule, a law, or heck, even an entire legal system is picked up from one country and just planted in another. And this kind of thing has been happening all through history. In fact, it's probably the main way legal systems change. And this quote from Watson really hits the nail on the head. He's saying that most laws aren't some perfect, tailor-made solution for the society they're in. Nope. More often than not, they're just an off-the-shelf model that got picked up because, hey, it was available and it seemed to work somewhere else. That's a pretty revolutionary way of looking at it. So you might be asking, why would a country just accept a foreign law? A lot of the time, it just comes down to authority. If a law is seen as coming from God, or if it's pushed by a national hero, think Napoleon, people are way more likely to just go along with it. And sometimes, like with ancient Roman law, the authority is just the idea that the law is a product of pure, undeniable reason. Okay, theory is great. But to really let this sink in, let's look at an absolutely fantastic real-world example. It's a story about two countries right next to each other, a revolution, and a legal mix-up that is just so ironic. And it perfectly shows what a legal transplant looks like. All right, so let's walk through the timeline here. In 1795, France takes over the area that is now Belgium and brings its famous Napoleonic Code with it. Fast forward to 1815, after Napoleon is defeated, Belgium and the Netherlands get smashed together into one kingdom. But the Belgians are not having it, so in 1830 they revolt and win their independence. Now, both countries have to sort out their legal systems. The Netherlands decides it's going to write a brand new, totally Dutch code, which they finish up in 1838. So here's a map of that kingdom that didn't last very long. This 15-year union created this really fascinating legal puzzle. See, while they were together, they started trying to write a new civil code to replace the old French one, but that revolution in 1830 just threw a giant wrench in the whole plan. And this is where the story gets really, really good. Meet this guy, Pierre Thomas Nicolai. He was the main person in charge of drafting that new, very national code for the Netherlands. But here's the kicker. Nicolai was from Liège. He was Belgian. So just look at this perfectly ironic outcome. The brand new country of Belgium, whose own constitution said they should replace the French laws as soon as possible, well, they just kept them. Meanwhile, the Netherlands, on this big quest for a truly national law of its own, ends up adopting a code written mostly by a guy who is now a foreigner, a Belgian. It's a textbook case of a legal transplant. You can't make this stuff up. Okay, so we've seen how a whole legal code can get transplanted. Now let's zoom way in. To really get our heads around this, we're going to follow one single specific legal rule from ancient Rome all the way into the modern world. The rule we're talking about is called periculum est emptoris. It's Latin, and it means the risk is on the buyer. And it was created to solve a really common but super tricky problem in sales contracts. So here's the scenario. Let's say you agree to buy something. I don't know, a valuable painting. The deal is made, you've shaken on it. But before the seller can actually deliver it to you, there's a fire at the gallery, and poof, the painting is gone. So the big question is, do you still have to pay for it? There are really only two ways this can go. The Roman idea, periculum est temptoris, said the buyer loses. As soon as the deal was final, the risk was all yours. So, yeah, you have to pay up, even though you'll never get the painting. The other option, of course, is that the seller loses. They get nothing for the item that was destroyed while it was still in their care. So how did modern countries handle this ancient Roman dilemma? Did they all come up with their own unique national solutions that reflected their Volksgeist? Of course not. They transplanted the Roman ideas. But they did it in some really fascinating and different ways. This one slide shows you the incredible legacy of that single Roman rule. You're looking at 4 different solutions that modern legal systems came up with, all based on the same original idea. So let's start at the top, where ownership transfers the second the contract is made. Countries like France, they stick pretty close to the original Roman law. Risk is on the buyer. But look at Quebec, it takes the opposite approach. The risk stays with the seller. Now check out the bottom row, where ownership only transfers when the item is actually delivered. Here, Switzerland says the risk follows ownership, so the buyer is safe until they have it. But Germany, the Netherlands, and Austria, they say the risk is on the seller right up until the very last second. I mean, it's just amazing. 4 totally different outcomes, all grown from the exact same transplanted Roman root. So here's the big takeaway. Our legal systems aren't these pure, monolithic things that sprung up from our national soul. Not at all. They're more like a patchwork quilt, a mosaic pieced together over centuries from borrowed bits of Roman law, French law, you name it. Our legal history is really just a history of successful transplants. And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. If the very rules that shape our societies aren't uniquely ours, if they're part of this shared, borrowed, global heritage, what does that actually say about our idea of national identity? It kind of suggests we're all a lot more connected than we think, doesn't it? Something to think about.